Love yourself for who you are. Don't let society nor any person, family, friend, or loved one define your life. And by loving yourself, you have the resiliency and strength to live the life that you want to live.
Welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast. It's your girl, Kate, here for another inspiring episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast. If you're new here, please make sure that you subscribe to the One Girl Revolution podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl, REVO. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at One Girl Revolution, and you can find all of our podcast episodes, our original documentary series, our social media links, and so much more on our website at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one girlrevolution.com. On this week's episode of the One Girl Revolution podcast, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Pamela Benitez, co-founder of the Shades of Pink Foundation. If you listen to this podcast regularly, Shades of Pink may be familiar to you because we've definitely talked about their great work on this podcast. And earlier this year, I had Mary Pat Rosen-Myers on the podcast, and she serves as president of the board of the Shades of Pink Foundation. But ever since I heard about the Shades of Pink Foundation, I knew that I had to have Dr. Benitez on to share the origin story, how Shades of Pink came to be, and to talk about the incredible work that they do, straight from one of the co-founders. Dr. Benitez has an incredible story, and she works as a surgeon and has some really inspiring stories to tell there as well. But we focus mainly on the Shades of Pink Foundation because I wanted to hear the incredible story of how this amazing foundation is transforming the lives and families of those they serve. Dr. Benitez tells her own personal story of dealing with cancer through her own sister's battle with cancer and how that has inspired her to make a difference through her work as a surgeon as well as the Shades of Pink Foundation. The Shades of Pink Foundation provides financial support to people going through breast cancer treatment. You'll hear more about their incredible work and the stories of the people that have been helped through their work in this inspiring episode. You do not want to miss this episode, so without further ado, here's my conversation with Dr. Pamela Benitez. Dr. Benitez, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
I am so excited to have you on. Many of our listeners would know that we had Mary Pat of Shades of Pink on before. She's incredible. I loved her story, but all along I was like, I really want to have Dr. Benitez on to share the origin story of Shades of Pink and to tell your story and hear all about you, but then also just how Shades of Pink started from your viewpoint. So I'm really excited to have you on to share about your incredible work. But before we get into that, I would love to hear your own story. So if we could just rewind, and I would love for you to share a little bit about your backstory, your upbringing with our listeners.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for this opportunity. It's great talking with you today. So, born in Maryland, experiencing my early years and kindergarten overseas, then traveling back to Texas, then to Washington, D.C., St. Louis, and finally upstate New York. I am the proverbial Army kid. So, it was great for me, of my siblings. It was great to travel around the world. This experience taught me to build connections with people quickly because I was the new kid on the block.
Where were some of your favorite places that you got to live during this experience, this upbringing?
I loved Germany. Germany was really great. Maybe it was the time of my life. I could play and have fun and have new friends. And because you're very young, you learn to speak the language, and it was a great country. So we had a great time. We were there for 3.5 years. And St. Louis is one of my favorite places. So I'm a good Midwestern girl.
Yeah, you are. And now we have you back here in Michigan where we want you, because we want good people back here in Michigan. What would you say are some of the positives and negatives of that upbringing? I've always been fascinated by people who have gone through that experience. I have friends that have gone through that experience of being a military kid. But what was that experience like? What were some of the positives and some of the negatives of that?
Well, it's interesting because I sometimes talk to my siblings about that. And for me, I sort of took it as an opportunity, sort of in quotes, to sort of reinvent myself or be somebody a little bit different or try different things. And whereas my sister, 2 years older than me, found it very difficult. She was more introverted, and it was harder for her to leave friends and meet new people. And I was much more the extrovert and would start to join groups or find different activities that I could do. But she was sort of more focused in a tighter circle of friends. So I could see in her eyes and through her experiences how it could be difficult. But I loved it. I loved it.
Now, how did that, or did it at all, did it impact or influence you into getting into medicine? Like, how did you get into medicine? And do you think that upbringing, that I imagine that you were just constantly learning and growing and interested in so many different things, living in different cultures, did that influence you at all?
Well, my dad was an Army pathologist, my mom a nurse. And I think that's where my love of medicine had its roots, although I remember wanting to be a doctor since I was 4 years old, playing doctor with my friends in Germany. That is a very clear memory for me. So I don't know exactly where it all began. I remember living through the experiences of my father as a pathologist and the things he had to deal with and what he would bring home or not. It wasn't the kind of experience that some of my friends might have had where they went to round with their parents in the hospital. I'd never had any of that. But it was just hearing some of his talks and hearing my mother's stories as a nurse. She was a nurse, then she stopped work, raised a family, then went back to private duty. So I saw a lot of medicine through her eyes as well. So I think those are the ways that I sort of became, involved in medicine. But I was raised in a household that really valued hard work and education as well as service to others. And through that, it all fit this whole sort of direction that I was going in, my love of science, to then pursue a career in medicine.
So you go into college. Tell me a little bit about that and how you ended up getting on the path to become the doctor that you are today.
Well, I took those values with me to Washington University in St. Louis. So I got to go back to St. Louis, and I majored in science and English. And from there, I attended Albany Medical College of Union University in upstate New York. And I had the intention all along, once I started my coursework, to go into family medicine. But as it turned out, I ended up in surgery. So that was quite the change for me in terms of how my medical school career went and how I ended up as a surgeon.
How did you end up as a surgeon? What's that story? How did you end up?
It's a great story, and I think there's some lessons to be learned. I took the surgical clerkship, the required clerkship for third year at the end because of all the horrible things I had heard about how women are treated in surgery. So I just wanted to put it off. I had no interest in doing that, and so I said, I'm all set with a career in family medicine, and I thought I would like treating chronic medical diseases. And what I really was focused on, and my interest was the reality that diseases in any one individual in a family affects the entire family. And that aspect of healthcare I thought really needed to be addressed. And that was where I was politically active in the world of family medicine. It was a new specialty. So that's kind of what I was focusing on. But there I was taking my clerkship in surgery, and I decided, okay, I'm just gonna jump in. I'm gonna do the work, and I'm going to be a part of the team. And lo and behold, I found that I was really enjoying taking care of the surgical problems, whether it was just changing dressings or explaining procedures, helping people through this invasive experience. And I loved the whole aspect of surgery. I'm an artist in my life, and it was sort of the tactile, visual, and the colors and senses that you would get in surgery and the surgical experience that absolutely won me over. I was smitten. And I just said, okay, I love working with my hands. And as a surgeon, you took care of the whole person. Um, you couldn't operate on someone without thinking about the effects it would have for the heart, for the lungs, the endocrine, diabetes. So all of those medical diseases had to be factored in. So it was the best of all worlds. I had a fabulous clerkship because of my desires and my willingness to do the hard work. The residents treated me well, and I got to actually go in the operating room, see procedures as a third year student, and even they let me do a few stitches. Shh, don't tell anybody. So that was really great. That was great. And so I made the decision at the last part of my third year. We had already set up the fourth year electives, and I went to the chief of surgery and I said, I wanted to have a reality check. Is this really true that as an artist, that's why I would love surgery and the science that was involved in taking care of the surgical patient? And he pointed me to all of these ships in a bottle that he had created and said in his office, and he said, absolutely, surgeons are artists. And from there, my career was chosen.
There are two things that you said, and one is talking about surgery as being an art. Like that's something that I hadn't ever thought of. And I think everybody who's listening, we've all had some sort of surgery, whether it's on a small scale or on a large scale, but thinking about it as an art, and it's beautiful. Like our bodies are so beautiful. And so of course, when you're doing some sort of surgery, there's an art to it, but also that holistic approach. Like was raised in a family that believed in the holistic approach, looking at the body and what we're eating. And I have a lot of allergies. And so my mom was kind of piecemealing stuff together in the early days before Whole Foods and all of that. And she was a firm believer in the holistic approach to the person. You know, when you get sick, these are things that can, of course, you can go, and have medication or whatever, but also like, what are things that you're putting into your body and how's it affecting it? But that's the same with surgery. It's this holistic approach. You can't do a surgery on somebody if they have something else going on in their body. And so you really have to look at the holistic approach of the person. I think that's really beautiful. Both of those things.
Yeah, I think that you have to take into consideration how that disease and that operation will affect everyone in the family, let alone the individual. I always teach my residents, the patient sees the closure, but they also have to know that if the closure is beautiful, perhaps what you did on the inside is beautiful as well. So I always sort of tease them about how the closure is, but it is an art. And I absolutely love that about surgery.
Donate to One Girl Revolution's nonprofit organization to help us continue our work, highlighting inspiring women and girls that are changing the world through their lives, promoting their work and their organizations, and building a powerful and positive force out in the world dedicated to empowering women, their voices, and their stories. Donate at onegirlrevolution.com/donate. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com/donate. So tell me about your work now. Who are you working with? What are your patients? Some of the people that you work with at the hospital?
Well, and so let me just sort of go back one step. My journey, my next step in my educational journey was my surgical residency at the University of Michigan. So that makes it full circle. I'm back in the Midwest again. So that completes that journey in terms of being in the Midwest. And, at that time, I was the fourth woman who had ever gone through the residency at the University of Michigan, which obviously, as we've talked about, it was a field that was heavily populated by men. So that sort of has always been a part of sort of my modus operandi is understanding that experience of what it's like to be in a field where you sometimes have to really prove yourself. So we'll put that on the back burner. But after that, I then went to Wayne State and started my work in trauma because I really loved working in the inner city and I loved the surgical experience of trauma and critical care that went along with it. And during my tenure there, I was taken under the wing of the oncology department. And that's how my surgical oncology journey began. So that's really what happened. And through that, I did a lot of breast cancer surgery. My most memorable experience And the one that led me to stay in the work of breast surgery over time is the experience I had with my sister, who was diagnosed with breast cancer at a very young age. And I went through that experience with her as her sister, not as a physician. And I really heard or listened to her thoughts and concerns, as well as her fears. And those intimate experiences and conversations with her have stayed with me, and how she actually processed the information, how she made her decisions, and what she cared most about. And that's a number of years ago. So through that, not only was I concerned about the science of breast cancer treatments and treatment options, but I also, now this speaks to what you just said, I also concentrated on the nutritional aspects of health and well-being and the relationship of nutrition and cancer. And that's another subset in my life that I do in my spare time. I really have researched the role of nutrition in all diseases, but also in cancer. But it started, that whole investigation. I was a vegetarian through medical school, but that whole really hard work was done when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, because I really thought it would make a difference. And I could add that to her treatment program, let her physicians take care of her cancer, and I could help her with that, because my entire intent and focus was her to survive this diagnosis of breast cancer at a time that we were doing new sort of different things, and I didn't know where she would end up. So I'm thrilled to say that she is a 28-year survivor and has two fabulous grandchildren, which means that she saw her dream become a reality. So that really is my background, and that drives me every day, because I've seen it and I've been there, and it's really special to me. So, and I, in answer to your question, so to get back to your question, I'm blessed with the opportunity to work with patients from all walks of life and all communities. I really am.
Well, I think your story and your experience with your sister is so critical, and it's so important for people that are listening to this, but just people out in the world. I think I mentioned to you in an email that my mom was diagnosed with cholangiocarcinoma, very rare type of cancer, and passed away 6 weeks later. So it's still very real and very raw, but I have said to so many people that it's like, you don't understand the cancer journey unless you've been through it yourself. But on the other side of it too is like, you can't really understand the cancer journey unless you're a family member too, walking with someone. And I think there's something really special and important about that. And now you're able to use that experience through your own eyes to work with family members, to work with people actually going through cancer. And we need more people sharing their cancer journeys, but also family members or people who have had a very close experience with cancer to share their stories as well.
Yeah, I think it's made a difference in my life.
It changes you. That's the thing. These things, and even you talking about trauma, I think cancer is a trauma. So many things in our lives are a trauma, and it's something that obviously affects our lives. But look at what you're able to do now. And I can't wait to talk about Shades of Pink and everything that you're doing with that, because I'm sure that your sister's story and your experience with that just drives you every single day to do what you're doing in medicine, but also with Shades of Pink.
Well, I think that in working with these individuals, I have heard stories of the inequities and the financial difficulties that they have experienced. And I mean, I think a lot of times we physicians don't have time, or we don't talk about that with patients, or patients may not feel comfortable mentioning that to us because they're so focused on their treatment that somehow that's just not a conversation. And I think that's something we need to focus on. But if you look at the statistics, and especially if you look at the statistics in breast cancer, over 60% may lose their job or work fewer hours. And we know how that impacts everybody. And many of these patients will dip into their savings to help pay the bills. And some will go through their entire personal savings. There's even, I think, up to 10% will file for bankruptcy, which is incredible. So when I started to be made aware of this in working with breast cancer patients, it was truly a patient who came to me and asked me if there was any organization or foundation in the Metro Detroit area that could help her with the financial difficulties she was experiencing. And with that, she invited myself and her friend, Suzanne Kruger, who's the co-founder. And we all got together at a small restaurant in Ferndale and started to brainstorm and think about ways that we could create a foundation that could address this need, because it's a very real need. So we did. And I still have the napkin we wrote some ideas on. And from that night, we left there committed to form a foundation that could address the financial needs of patients going through a breast cancer journey. Suzanne went ahead and took classes at the University of Michigan on how to create a foundation. And I started working on the financial aspects, how we could get people to partner with us and to join us in our mission, to create some funding to get us off the ground. So together we got a small group of women to form the board. And as we were talking earlier, you can't do this by yourself. And it was the dedication of these volunteers to be on the board, to help us to create this foundation that made Shades of Pink take flight. And our initial fundraising was either some small private events or different yoga classes, or different groups would do fundraising for us, and we were the beneficiary. So that's how we started.
It's absolutely incredible what you do. And it's just so, in so many ways, it's just simple. But people don't realize the moment that you get a cancer diagnosis, the amount of bills that start coming in, all the different things that the expectations, and like all the different doctor visits and caregivers, right? Like so many family members, you mentioned people having to leave their jobs if they're a cancer patient, if they're going through therapies and treatment, but also family members. Somebody a lot of times has to drive people to and from the hospitals. And there are just so many things that can feel so suffocating. And what Shades of Pink does is just pulls all of those like different things that are piling on someone and just says, we're walking with you. You're walking with so many people through their cancer journey. And I just think it's so simple, but so important.
Yeah. Well, I derive so much joy from what I've seen the foundation become. We just thought about different ways that we could fundraise, and I'm an avid walker. So there was an opportunity that arose to bring a walk back to the Detroit Zoo. So I presented that to Suzanne, who's not a walker, and to the board, and she went along and said, okay, let's figure this out. And now A Wild Time at the Detroit Zoo is our signature event every spring in April. And we just have a great time at that event. It's started very small. I was standing on a picnic table to talk to 100 people. And now we hope to have several thousand at that event. And it's important in terms of our mission and fundraising. We celebrate our survivors, the friends, families, the teams that are created to support someone who's going through this journey, to those who've passed and other supporters of our mission. So it's really an inspirational day for our community. And that's just an absolutely wonderful day that we can celebrate each other and see Shades of Pink Foundation at its finest.
Well, and community is so important, right? Like
Right.
to feel like you're not alone, and for the families, for the survivors, for all the different people that you think about that are connected to one person's cancer journey, for them all not to feel alone and to feel supported. And you've built that community through all your different events and through your social media. And there are so many different ways that people can get connected to you. And I just think that that is so important, as much as the financial support is so critical and so important to someone who's going through cancer, who's walking with cancer, but also to have that community support. And you've created that.
Yeah, I think it's great. I love it.
So for people that are listening, maybe they heard Mary Pat's episode, maybe they didn't. Tell me about, how do you get connected to people to support them through Shades of Pink, and how do you fund it? How do you fund the foundation?
So it's funded by events that we do. Right now, we do 3 events. We have 2 golf outings. We have the Wild Time at the Detroit Zoo. It's also, we're the beneficiaries of third-party events. So that's a lot of the funding. There's just general donations that occur. So that's how we're funded. We are looking for more funding through grant opportunities. So what happens is the patient will seek assistance from a social worker or a navigator at their hospital. And through them, they'll fill out an application. So they're vetted through that individual. And that individual usually has knowledge of other opportunities in the community, whether it's the HEAT Fund or DTE or something. So there are certain ways that bills can be paid through other organizations or other systems. But in the end, they help that patient, now a client of ours, fill out the application, and it's submitted to our client services committee. What's wonderful about how we've structured this, it's all anonymous. So I don't know any of the individuals unless they choose to speak for us. I don't know anyone who's been a recipient. So it's all done very confidentially. And the client service committee analyzes that application. They decide what they can do to help. We average about $2,000 per application, and we pay the creditors directly. So we're paying for car payment, car repair, utilities, mortgage and rent. Those are all the biggies, childcare. So we pay directly to the creditors, and it's very clean, it's neat. And one of the things that having seen it for so many years, is how paying $2,000 doesn't sound like a lot, but it really gets an individual over that hump that just seems so monumental. They just don't know where to go. And we've answered a prayer. We've just made a difference in their life. And surprisingly, I have not known of any individual who's come for a second time to ask for a second grant, which tells you that it just is enough to make a difference so that that person can focus on their cancer treatment rather than have to focus on how I'm going to put food on the table. Am I going to be able to have a car to drive to my treatments? Do I have heat on the house? I find that it's amazing, and we can't take this lightly. The gratitude I have for the committee doing its work and being able to help these individuals is unbelievable.
It's so small. Like, that's the thing, is it's just, like you said, $2,000 to a lot of people might not sound like a lot, but it can cover so many little things, so much and that's really it. I think that's just coming out of it with my mom. It's like, I think so many of the little things were the most difficult. It's like, how are you going to pay for this? How are you going to pay for this bill? And a lot of times it's maybe not even the medical bills, but it's all the little things that she needed or things that would make her more comfortable. And so that's what you're really able to do for people and support them, whatever they need. If they have children, that you can pay for daycare or just the everyday things that we all take for granted.
Yeah, they can reallocate their finances to say, okay, I'm going to take this money. These bills are paid, so now I can use this money either to pay my doctor bill, or maybe I can have my child stay in daycare for an extra day or two. It helps in so many different ways.
Yeah. So I love stories, and I know you've listened to this podcast a little bit, and every person, I'm sure Mary Pat, I know she shared a couple of stories. And hopefully, I'm sure your stories will be different, but are there a couple of stories of people that have been helped through Shades of Pink that touched your heart in a special way? And I know that you don't a lot of times know the names, but you know the stories. So I'd love to hear a couple of stories that really touched your heart in a special way.
One story that has always stayed with me, and I sometimes get choked up about this because it's a young woman who had 2 children. And this was a number of years ago. And we weren't all that big, but her need was great. And she was absolutely on the verge of eviction. And she would have been on the street. There was no family nearby, so she didn't have family in the area. She had no friends that could take her in. And she got her application to us in time that we could then clearly provide several months' rent and keep her from being evicted from her apartment. When I look at that, I realize that we're helping children as well. We're helping families. It's back to the bigger picture. We're helping her during her journey, but there are so many children that are part of these households that we've helped. And I feel like we've kept a roof over their heads. We've helped to keep them warm. And I pulled up a letter from one of our clients because I think it's a great story. And she said, after I was contacted this morning, I actually thought I was dreaming or imagining this. She was told that she had received the grant. This will save my apartment and my car. I thought I was going to have to let it go back to the dealership. More importantly, I will not have to apply for state assistance. I wanted to avoid the stress and humiliation. If it wasn't for my social worker's assistance, I could not have gone through the application process. She is my champion, and you, Shades of Pink Foundation, are my salvation. Having no assistance from my employer and no living relatives, this is going to save me and my daughter. I will be forever grateful and will never forget this.
Wow. I'm getting choked up sitting here. It's so powerful and it's so simple, right? It's the everyday things, the basic needs of people, and you're able to provide that for them.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. And like you said, it's like, it is not only helping one person, right? It's helping generations and generations. And I can only imagine the ripple effect that it's going to have, because these children are going to grow up probably hearing about Shades of Pink or hearing about the difficulties that they were facing during their mom's cancer journey or whatever the situation is. And I'm sure that so many of those people will volunteer. I know that you see them all at the walk every year, and it's kind of this cyclical thing where you're building community, but also it's affecting so many people, generations and generations of people. So I can't wait to see where you go from here. Now,
Sure.
I know that Shades of Pink has grown and evolved so much since you started it, but where do you go from here? Or where do you hope that Shades of Pink goes from here?
Well, for me, my legacy is that Shades of Pink Foundation will be here with a very strong, well-funded, that it'll be a well-funded, sustainable foundation long after me. That's really my wish. And to do so, we really need supporters who take ownership of Shades of Pink Foundation as their foundation that they want to support for infinity, if you will. So it's that kind of relationship that we are looking for people who say, this is our organization, we will support you and we will be here. And that will give us that strength to maintain our mission forever.
So let's talk about that. How do people support you? Also, I know that corporations and companies and business owners can support you in different ways too. How can people support Shades of Pink Foundation?
Well, individuals certainly can support us in so many ways. We love our volunteers, and they can volunteer their time, their expertise, their skills, and their wisdom, of course. There are those who can provide financial support. Love that. Participating in events is so important. Again, growing our community. It really helps for us to have more people involved so that we create that awareness. We really want people to know that Shades of Pink Foundation is here and here to stay and serving our community. There are also opportunities to become a member of a committee, and if you're really so inclined, to be on our board. So there's lots of opportunities to be a part of Shades of Pink Foundation, and we welcome you with open arms.
I want to encourage everybody who's listening to follow you on social media, to reach out to you if they have a story, if they have a resource, if they have their company wants to support what you're doing, come out to the walk. I will be sure that One Girl promotes it and promotes your golf outings whenever they're happening, because I really want people who are listening to support you in any way that they can. And if they're not here in Michigan, they can still donate. They can still follow you on social media and point individuals towards you as well, and share all your posts. I always say on this podcast that that's a free way that you can get involved in something. Of course, you can volunteer, but you also can just follow organizations, foundations on social media and share their posts. So Dr. Benitez, you shared so many different, I feel like there are so many different facets to this question, but I'm going to ask you anyways. Why is the work that you do with Shades of Pink Foundation so important? I know you shared some very amazing stories, life-changing stories. But for you, why do you think that the work you do with Shades of Pink Foundation is so critical?
Because I think one person can make a difference. And I really feel that if you have a dream, you can follow it and you can create something that's going to make a difference to the community. And I see how it helps one person in her journey. And I know how difficult the journey is. So to take one piece off her plate brings me great joy, so she can really focus on what she needs to focus on, which is to heal. Healing is just not out external, it's internal as well as external. So we can do everything to her, for her, but healing is going to come from the inside, and having some peace and having some comfort that this gives her or him truly makes a difference.
Watch In Tandem, the new short documentary by One Girl Revolution, which highlights the incredible story of Caitlin Cullen and her restaurant in Milwaukee, The Tandem. The Tandem is more than a restaurant. It's a family, a community that at its height was a bustling restaurant serving food and supporting every single person who walked through its doors in one way or another. If someone needed a job, you got it. Having a bad day and needing a smile or a laugh, The Tandem's got you. Having a rough time and need support, The Tandem isn't just a restaurant, it's your family. They got you. When COVID hit in March 2020, The Tandem stepped up to serve the community in a new way. They stopped selling food to customers and started solely feeding people in need. The Tandem community ended up feeding over 115,000 people during the first year of the pandemic. Absolutely incredible. Get to know Caitlin and the Tandem story in One Girl Revolution's new short documentary, In Tandem. Watch In Tandem today at onegirlrevolution.com or on YouTube. Please watch and share this inspiring story. Now, you work with cancer survivors. You also work with so many people who are walking with cancer, whether it be in your full-time job or Shades of Pink Foundation. For somebody who's listening who maybe just got a cancer diagnosis, what would you say to them? What would your message be for them?
My first statement would be to be positive and to stay positive. The second I would say is to take a deep breath. Just pause and take a deep breath. I see so much anxiety. I just often say to someone, let's all just sit here and breathe. I would then say to listen carefully to your team of healthcare professionals. Trust them, find a group that you can trust, learn from them, understand the options, ask questions, and move forward. I think it's so important for people to understand we have come so far in breast cancer treatment. It clearly doesn't have the same meaning that it had years ago. There are so many new treatments and options, and the research is just amazing. So much is coming to fruition every month, every quarter, that there are incredible opportunities for success. And even some of the more difficult cancers that we have to treat have benefited from studies that are complete now and offer great results that we've never had before. So be positive and stay positive. And please don't give up. There are answers around the corner, just to hang in there.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think it's mind over matter, right? We hear that, but I think it's a mental game. And if you can stay positive and stay focused and, like you said, ask questions and get all the information before you decide what you're going to do. And I think a lot of times a cancer diagnosis knocks the wind out of you, right? Even if it's not terminal or whatever stage it's at, some of them are very treatable, like you shared, and just stay focused. And cancer can be such a terrifying word, but I know so many people who are on the other side of their cancer journey and are thriving. And it's so important for us to stay positive.
I think that I tell women who've found breast cancer early, that, they're more likely to die from heart disease than they are to die from their breast cancer. So let's talk about what we can do. And that's where I bring in that whole nutrition, that holistic approach, the complementary approach, to say this is what we can do in addition to, because we have to worry about your other health conditions. And we don't want you to die from a disease that you don't have to die from. I mean,
right.
Really.
Right. What would you say to somebody that has a friend or family member that is going through cancer right now? What can we do to support them?
So the first thing might sound a little harsh, but I'm going to just say this. Think before you speak. So I would dispense with cliches like everything happens for a reason in this cancer world, or you'll be stronger for this. I'm not sure that they have a place. I'd also be real careful about saying, I know what you're going through, unless you've really walked that path, because you don't. Having said that, I also want to put a plug about, again, as I said, listening to your healthcare team, and not to listen to what Sue and Sally, I use Sue and Sally, I'm doing this air quotes, I know it's a podcast, air quotes, what Sue and Sally say, because, they've undergone breast cancer treatment, but every single breast cancer patient's diagnosis and treatment is different than the other. And there are nuances and fine details in each person's care that has to be addressed individually. So there is no rubber stamp. With the advances that we've experienced, what someone may have gone through maybe just 2 to 5 years ago are different today. And that's the beauty of where we're at in breast cancer care. So that's kind of starting with the negatives. And I didn't mean to do that, but here's some additional advice that I would recommend is to be present with them. I mean, really to be present. Be an ear, listen, let them speak. Try not to offer medical advice. Ask what they need. Perhaps they need a meal, a ride to a doctor's appointment, grocery shopping, or get a team of friends to come clean the house. Many patients they're so overwhelmed, they don't know how to ask for help, and they don't know what to ask for. So put it out there and say, can we do one of these things? Ask them how you can help. And I think that's really what we can do with someone who we know who's going through this cancer journey.
I had someone on the podcast the other day that was talking about cancer, different organization, different elements. And she said, act, don't ask. And she was like, look at what we all need, whether it's groceries, a meal, like put something in a freezer bag that they can put in their freezer and just pull it out on one of the rough days or a day that they're craving whatever's in there. But also I'll put in a plug for Cleaning for a Reason, this amazing organization that comes and does cleanings, house cleanings for cancer patients. And we were grateful enough to have a couple of house cleanings from them during my mom's cancer journey. And like, what a gift. Like, it just changes your life to have a clean house. So
it does. It sounds silly, but it's so valuable.
So like show up at somebody's house, or if you know that they're going for chemo or radiation or something, they're going to be away from their house for a couple of hours, go and get a team of people together and clean their house or get groceries. Like you said, there's so many little things and that can make such an impact, or gift cards. I know that was one thing that was really helpful for us, but Dr. Benitez, you are such a gift, and the Shades of Pink Foundation is so amazing. I'm so grateful to be connected with you. I can't wait to continue to support all the great work that you're doing and share everything on our social media. Before I let you go, I have 2 final questions for you. The first one is, who is a one girl revolution in your life? Who's a woman or girl that's inspired you?
I would have to say my sister. She's my hero. My sister has lived those values that I get choked up. I'm so proud of her. She's 2 years older. She's lived the values of hard work, education, and service to others that we were raised with. And despite some major misfortunes in her life, including her diagnosis of both uterine and breast cancer, she has survived and survived well. She never let a cancer diagnosis define her nor dictate her life. She rose up after each misfortune and moved on with success, whether it was retraining in a new field or getting a new job or just picking up and moving on. She did it all, and I am so proud to be her sister.
Well, I know she's proud to be your sister too, and I hope that I get to meet her at some point. And I know that everybody who's listening to this podcast right now it's inspired by you, inspired by her and her story, and everybody else who's connected to the Shades of Pink Foundation, because you're just an incredible community. And what a gift. Shades of Pink Foundation may not have come around if it wasn't for your sister and her own story. So it's just absolutely incredible. So final question. I always end this podcast on one question, and I'd like to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
I would say to be true to yourself. Love yourself. Love yourself for who you are. Don't let society nor any person, family, friend, or loved one define your life. And by loving yourself, you have the resiliency and strength to live the life that you want to live. I think society, in so many ways and formats, has often and still tells us, girls and women, what we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to be, that we're not pretty enough, smart enough. We're told that how we're supposed to behave. And over time, we really do accept this message. We incorporate it into our being, and we need to really break that cycle. So I look at that and I say, how do we, or how do you, or how do I fight the society's norms and expectations? I think you have to focus and set goals. You do what you have to do to learn the trade or whatever you need to learn to have the tools to achieve your goals. Put in that hard work, get the education you need. Importantly, don't let fear stop you. Don't let failures define you or stop you. Don't let the naysayers out there stop you. I want us all to believe in ourselves and give something we as women don't do is to give ourselves credit for what we've accomplished and reward ourselves. We clearly don't do that. And I think by doing all of that, you get that belief in yourself. Through this and through that belief, you'll find your purpose and passion and discover where and how you can and will be of service to others. So that's what I would offer to young women and women in their lives to have that life that you want to live.
I love it so much. And I truly believe, I think that there's a little girl inside of each and every one of us, somebody that we were created to be. And sometimes the world kind of etches away at that or kind of covers us up, for who we're supposed to be. And we need to find that little girl and become that person. And we're becoming it every single day. It's one step at a time, and you might get knocked down or feel really disheartened about something that you're experiencing or something you're going through, but we can do it. And when you stand up and you rise up, like you were talking about, it inspires and empowers other people to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Dr. Benitez, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you for being on One Girl Revolution. And we're just so grateful to be connected with you. And thank you for all the great work that you do with Shades of Pink Foundation and in your job supporting women. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Kate, for all that you're doing to provide a platform for women to have a voice and to share their experiences, share how they're making a difference. I think, we change the world, as I said, one person at a time. Yes, it does take a village, but we're all in this together.
We are.
And I want to thank my husband too, because he's just one amazing supporter of me. And
I love it. Yeah. And this podcast is all about anybody in the world who's supporting us. Because I always say that it's not just One Girl Revolution. It's the army that supports them. So shout out to your husband.
He's been there and he supports me, respects me, and honors me. And, I'm so blessed to have that in my life.
It's amazing. Well, Dr. Benitez, again, thank you so much for all the great work that you do. And thank you for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast. Please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at One Girl Revo. That's the number one girl REVO. And you can find more information on One Girl Revolution at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number one girlrevolution.com.